Welcome back, everyone, to Creepy Secrets. Tonight, we're diving into 10 of the most disturbing true Appalachian missing hiker horror stories. These mountains are stunning, but beneath the beauty lies a dark side. Hikers who vanished without a trace, eerie signs left behind, and chilling encounters that defy explanation. These stories will make you think twice before hitting the trails alone. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to Creepy Secrets, hit that like button, and share this video with your friends. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Thanks for joining us. Now let's get started. I still remember the exact moment I knew something was wrong. It was late afternoon, and the Appalachian forest was quiet in that unsettling way forests can be when the wind dies down and the birds go silent. My brother Tyler and I had planned this hiking trip weeks in advance, something he'd insisted on doing before heading back to college for the semester. I thought it would be a normal weekend, campfires, long trails, a little adventure. I thought I knew my brother. I was wrong. We had split up briefly to scout a small ridge overlooking the valley. I was halfway down a winding trail when I heard a faint shout, one I could have easily mistaken for the wind carrying my own thoughts back to me. "Tyler?" I called, my voice catching slightly. Silence. Then a crunching sound behind me, quick and deliberate. I spun around. Nothing. Just the dense trees swaying in the weak light. When I reached the campsite again, I found his backpack slung carelessly on the ground. That wasn't unusual, he was messy. But the tent was standing alone, open, flapping slightly in the breeze. I expected him to be inside, fiddling with his sleeping bag or making notes in his journal. I expected to see his familiar smirk. He wasn't there. At first, I thought he had gone for a quick solo hike, leaving me to stew in my own paranoia. I called his phone. Straight to voicemail. Again and again. Panic started crawling up my spine. My chest tightened, hands shaking as I rifled through the tent. His gear was all there. Clothes, food, even his water bottle. It was as if he had vanished into thin air, leaving behind everything that marked him as present only moments ago. I started retracing his steps, following the narrow trail we had mapped out together. The forest was denser than I remembered, branches snagging at my sleeves, roots threatening to twist my ankles. Shadows stretched long and jagged as the sun sank lower. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig made my heart lurch. I called his name again, louder this time, my voice raw. No answer. Just the whisper of the wind through the pines. Hours passed. The light dimmed into a cold blue haze. I found footprints near the ridge, but they didn't match Tyler's hiking boots. They were smaller, oddly shaped, as if someone or something had stepped lightly across the undergrowth, leaving impressions almost too precise to be natural. My stomach turned. I felt watched. I could feel eyes tracking my every movement from behind the trees. I stumbled upon a clearing where the sun had fully disappeared, leaving only the faint glow of twilight. And there it was, Tyler's tent again, set up neatly as if nothing had happened, but now the air around it felt thick, heavy, like the forest itself was holding its breath. I approached slowly, every step cautious. The tent flap shifted slightly, though no wind moved it. My throat tightened. I called his name one more time. Silence. Something in me compelled me to go inside. The interior was empty, but I noticed the small things. His journal, open on the ground, pages ruffled. There were notes, quick sketches of paths and trees, but then at the very bottom, a sentence I didn't recognize, written in shaky, almost unfamiliar handwriting. I see them watching. My heart thudded. My brother wasn't just missing. He was being watched, perhaps for a long time before I even arrived. I sat by the tent, flashlight trembling in my hand, trying to piece together what had happened. The forest around me had grown darker, the trees forming gnarled shapes in the dim light. Every sound seemed amplified, the scurrying of some small animal, the distant drip of water, my own ragged breathing. I felt like I wasn't alone. I knew I wasn't. Night fell. Cold seeped into my bones. The kind of cold that isn't just physical, but feels like it's gnawing at your insides. I decided I couldn't stay there. I had to leave, to find help. But as I stepped away from the tent, I caught movement, just beyond the tree line. A shadow, humanoid in shape, but wrong. The way it moved was unnatural, deliberate, watching. I froze, my breath caught. I whispered Tyler's name. The shadow disappeared. I ran back along the trail, trying to remember the paths we had marked, but everything seemed changed. Trails I thought I knew twisted into unfamiliar directions. The forest had become a maze, one I didn't recognize. The wind picked up suddenly, howling through the branches like voices laughing. I stumbled over roots, scratched my arms on the underbrush, and eventually, utterly exhausted, collapsed near a creek. I spent the night there, shivering, clutching Tyler's backpack, feeling that invisible presence circling, never letting me rest. I tried to sleep, but every crack of a branch, every rustle of leaves made my skin crawl. And then I heard it, soft, deliberate, the faint echo of footsteps. Not one, but many, walking around me, stopping, moving, whispering. I couldn't tell if it was human, animal, or something else entirely. Morning came. I found my way back to the main trail, following the markers we had set up. Rescue teams later told me they had searched the area extensively. No one had seen Tyler. No one had found a single trace of him beyond his tent, which they claimed had been undisturbed. The journal pages were gone when they examined the tent. Nothing made sense. Weeks passed. I returned to the area multiple times, trying to find clues, to make sense of the disappearance. I never saw Tyler again. But sometimes when the wind blows through the pines just right, I hear faint whistling, a sound I know was his. I follow it in my mind, retracing those paths, remembering that clearing, the footprints, the tent that seemed alive with something unseen. Sometimes at night, I wake up convinced I see shadows moving outside my window, tall shapes flitting between the trees. And I swear, every now and then, I hear a voice, his voice, calling for help, just beyond the reach of my hearing. The forest didn't take him by accident. It watched him, studied him, and maybe still holds him somewhere. And now, because I went looking, because I saw the tent empty but waiting, I know the forest has noticed me too. I haven't been back, but I can't stop thinking about it. Every time I close my eyes, I see the ridge, the clearing, the footprints, and that tent, open and still, waiting. I don't know what happened to Tyler. I don't know if he's alive, if he's trapped, or if something else took him. All I know is that the Appalachians have a memory, and once they take notice of you, they never forget. Sometimes when I'm alone, I think I hear the soft zip of a tent being opened, or the faint crackle of a campfire far off in the distance. And my stomach twists every time because I know it's the same tent I saw that day, and I know it's waiting. I don't sleep well anymore. Even in the city, even with lights on, I feel eyes following me. I keep telling myself it's just paranoia, but the cold fingers of that forest still reach me, and I can't shake the feeling that Tyler is still out there. Somewhere, and that something in the woods is watching us both. I haven't stopped looking for him, and I don't think I ever will. Because if I don't, I'll never forgive myself. But the longer I wait, the clearer it becomes that maybe the forest has no intention of giving him back. And sometimes, in the quietest moments, I wonder if the forest ever lets anyone go at all. I could feel it the second I parked at the trailhead, like the forest was watching me. I'd been backpacking in the Appalachians for years, always alone, always careful. But that evening there was something different in the air. The sun had already gone behind the ridges, and the shadows in the trees were stretching long and jagged. I saw the ranger's truck parked near the signboard, and I thought it was strange. There was never anyone around this late. He waved me over as I unpacked my gear. "Don't follow the trail markers at night," he said flatly, like he didn't want to explain further. I laughed it off, assuming he was just one of those old-timers who believed in ghost stories. "I know the park. I hike alone all the time," I told him. But there was a weight in his eyes, a warning I couldn't shake. I started down the trail anyway, the pack heavy on my shoulders, the crisp evening air biting my face. The trees were crowded together, limbs scratching against one another, making the soft wind sound like whispers. I kept thinking about the ranger's words, but I pushed them aside. He probably just didn't want anyone lost after dark. The markers glowed faintly in the twilight, little orange rectangles nailed to trees. I followed them, step by step, the crunch of leaves underfoot the only sound for miles. But then the markers seemed off. They weren't spaced like they usually were. Some of them were too close, others oddly high, like someone had tried to confuse whoever was walking. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe some hikers had moved them. But as the darkness deepened, I started hearing things. First, it was a rustle in the brush, soft and careful, like something or someone was trying to keep pace with me. I froze, heart hammering, but there was nothing. Just shadows, moonlight filtering through the canopy. I laughed nervously and kept moving, telling myself it was a deer, a fox, maybe another hiker. But the feeling didn't leave. It grew heavier, like the air itself was pressing down on me. By the time I reached the small clearing where the old log bridge crossed the creek, my gut told me I should turn back. The water gurgled quietly, but I could swear I heard voices underneath it, faint and garbled, like people whispering just out of comprehension. I tried to shake it off, stepped onto the bridge, and that's when I saw the first marker that didn't make sense. A bright orange rectangle nailed to a tree, but the arrow pointed back the way I had come. I frowned, then shrugged. Maybe it loops, I muttered to myself. But I didn't feel loops. I felt trapped. I kept going, trying to follow the markers, but now every step felt like it echoed wrong. The trail seemed narrower, twisted more sharply than it had on the map, and the woods themselves seemed to lean toward me. The trees' shadows stretched like fingers across the path. My flashlight cut swaths of light, but each one felt too small, like trying to hold back the dark with a candle. I started hearing movement again, this time on the ridge above me, like something was walking through the treetops. My heartbeat slammed so hard I thought the sound might echo. I called out, jokingly at first, but my voice sounded tiny and scared, bouncing off the trees. No response, just the rustling, the soft snap of branches, always keeping pace above and around me. Panic began to settle in my chest. I tried to turn back, but the trail markers seemed to have disappeared, replaced by faint scratches of orange in the dark that didn't lead anywhere. It was like the forest had swallowed the real trail and replaced it with a fake one, a maze designed to trap me. Hours passed. I lost track of time. I didn't even check my watch. My flashlight batteries were dying, the beams sputtering across the twisted roots and fallen leaves. Hunger, cold, and fear gnawed at me. Then I saw it, another marker, nailed crooked to a tree, but this one had words carved into it, not painted. "You shouldn't be here." I froze, my throat dry, hands shaking. I whispered the words back at it, half expecting it to answer. I don't know why, but I felt like someone or something was right behind me, just out of sight, laughing quietly. I ran. I didn't care where, just away from the markers, away from the path that didn't exist. Branches tore at my face, roots caught my feet, my lungs burned with every step. I stumbled into a denser part of the forest, the moonlight barely breaking through. I tried to call out, but my voice sounded hollow, and I swear the woods swallowed it. Then I saw the shadow. It wasn't human, at least not entirely. It moved like a man, but the limbs were too long. The movements jerky and unnatural, like something struggling to mimic a person. I froze, and it froze too, standing maybe 20 feet away, just staring. I could hear its breathing, slow, wet, and heavy, and I realized with horror it didn't have a face. Just a black void where features should be, almost like a hole in the air. I turned and ran again, faster this time, screaming into the night. I tripped and fell into a ditch, scraping my hands and knees on jagged roots. When I looked up, it was gone. The silence that followed was worse than its presence. By dawn, I had somehow stumbled back onto a real part of the trail. My flashlight was dead, my water gone, my pack ripped. I didn't see anyone, didn't see the markers I'd followed, just empty forest. I kept walking until I finally found the ranger station. I banged on the door, exhausted and crying. The ranger opened it, older now than when I'd seen him the night before, and just shook his head. He said quietly, "Most people don't make it when they follow the markers after dark." I asked him what I had seen. He didn't answer at first, just poured me some coffee. Then he said, "There are things in these woods. Things that copy the trail, copy us, lead us where they want. Some call them spirits, some call them lost hikers. They feed on attention, on fear." I didn't know if I should laugh or scream. I wanted to leave right then, run back to the car, and never come back. But I asked, trembling, "Did they follow me?" He didn't answer. He just looked at me, eyes dark, and said, "You'll know when they do." I left the park that day, sun high, the roads empty and quiet, but I never felt safe again. Even now, years later, I can't walk through a forest without hearing the rustle behind me, the faint sound of someone or something keeping pace. Sometimes, late at night, I dream of the markers, crooked and bright against the dark, pointing me somewhere I can't return from. And every dream ends with the same sense of wrongness, that gut-deep knowledge that the forest hasn't let me go yet, that whatever followed me back that night is still waiting, patient and silent, just beyond the shadows. I haven't hiked alone in the Appalachians since. I can't. And sometimes when I see a trail marker, any trail marker, I feel that same icy weight in my chest. The markers aren't just paint on wood, they're eyes. They watch, they wait, and if you're careless enough to follow them after dark, they take you. I still can't tell if I escaped that night or if I'm still being led. I remember the exact moment I knew something was wrong. We'd been hiking in the Appalachians for 2 days. The trail barely marked and thick with mist that clung to the trees like a living thing. My friend Jason was usually careful, always checking the map, always making sure we stayed together. But that morning, he had wandered ahead, mumbling something about a shortcut he'd read about online. I shrugged it off at first, thinking he was just trying to save us time. Then the fog swallowed him. 1 second he was there, silhouetted against the gray mist. The next he was gone. I called his name, voice cracking, my stomach twisting into knots, but all I got back was silence. Just the echo of my own fear bouncing off the trees. I spent the rest of that day retracing our steps, shouting, whistling, hoping to hear his voice. I checked the streams, the ridges, any place he might have slipped or hidden, but there was nothing. No footprints besides mine. I didn't want to believe he was gone. Not entirely, but as night fell and the forest grew thick with shadow, the cold pressing into my bones, I realized the reality I was facing. Jason wasn't just lost, something was wrong, and I wasn't prepared for the kind of wrong it was. I stayed awake by a dying fire, listening to the wind whistle through the pines, convincing myself that he might stumble out of the trees by morning. But morning came, and he didn't. The search party found tracks the next day. Broken branches, a few deep footprints leading off the trail, then nothing. No sign of a struggle, no blood, just an abrupt stop. Rangers shook their heads and warned me about the dangers of the backwoods. Wild animals, unstable terrain, people getting disoriented in the fog. But I knew that wasn't it. I'd grown up around these mountains. I'd hiked alone plenty of times. The silence where his trail ended wasn't natural. It was deliberate. There was a heaviness in the air, a subtle wrongness that I could feel pressing on my chest, and it terrified me. Weeks passed. I went back to the trail a few times, alone, almost against my better judgment, dragging my flashlight along the roots and moss, peering into every shadowed nook. Each time I felt it, like eyes watching me from just beyond the reach of the light. I told myself it was paranoia, the grief twisting my mind, but the feeling was real. And then, one evening, as I was driving down a country road near the edge of the forest, I saw him. Jason, standing at the side of the road, soaked, pale, with that same thin, haunted look in his eyes. My heart stopped. I slammed the brakes, skidding to a halt, but when I jumped out, he was gone. No footprints, no tire tracks, nothing. Just the cold night air and the crickets singing like nothing had happened. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel when I got back in my car. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I thought I imagined it. I told myself I was exhausted, losing my mind. But then it happened again, and again. At odd times, in the grocery store parking lot, walking along a quiet stretch of road, once even when I looked out my bedroom window at night. Always him, standing there silently, watching, never moving toward me, but never letting me forget he was there. I started keeping a journal, writing down the times and places, trying to see a pattern, trying to convince myself it was coincidence. But the pattern was too precise, too intentional, and the more I saw him, the less human he seemed. His skin looked pallid in the moonlight, almost gray, and his eyes had this hollow, distant look, like he wasn't really seeing me, just waiting. Waiting for what, I didn't know, and I was too scared to find out. I didn't tell anyone at first. People would call me crazy if I said I was being followed by my missing friend. Maybe I was. Maybe grief had finally broken me. But then my sister called me one evening, her voice trembling. She said she'd seen Jason too, near the river behind her house, just standing there like a statue. She ran when he noticed her, but she swore she hadn't imagined it. That's when I knew. It wasn't me. It wasn't grief. He was out there. And he was doing something I couldn't understand. I tried everything. Calling the police, setting up cameras around my house, even taking a different route to work. But it didn't matter. Jason appeared. Always. I started losing sleep, and when I did sleep, I dreamt of him wandering the forest looking for me. Or sometimes I was back on the trail with him, calling his name, but he wouldn't respond. And then I'd wake up with the sound of rustling leaves outside my window long before dawn. I couldn't tell if it was real or not. I didn't know what was real anymore. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove back into the mountains, determined to find him, to finally end this, whatever this was. The fog was thick, and I could barely see more than a few feet ahead. I called his name over and over, my voice breaking, the echo mocking me. I walked for hours, feeling like I was walking in circles until I came across a small clearing. And there he was, Jason, standing perfectly still, facing me. I ran to him, my relief crashing into me like a wave, but the closer I got, the more wrong he looked. His eyes were black at the edges, sunken, and there was this something in his expression, something not human at all. He tilted his head at me and I could hear it, not a voice, but a whisper in my mind, words I couldn't say out loud. You shouldn't be here. I stumbled back, falling to my knees, trying to make sense of it, trying to convince myself it was some trick of the fog, some reflection, some hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But it wasn't. He raised a hand slowly, and the temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath. My teeth chattered. The shadows around him stretched and twisted, like the forest itself was leaning toward me. I scrambled backward, heart hammering, tripping over roots and rocks, until I was running blindly, lungs burning, screaming his name, calling him back, but there was nothing. The clearing was empty. The fog had swallowed him again. Since that night, I've avoided the mountains, avoided the woods entirely. But sometimes, when I'm walking home late at night, or driving down a lonely road, I catch a glimpse of him. Just a flash in the corner of my eye. Always watching, always there. I don't know what happened to him, or why he's like this. And the worst part is, I feel it in my bones, that if I ever go back to the Appalachians, I'll see him again. And maybe next time he won't just be standing there. Maybe next time he'll want me to follow. I've stopped talking to people about it. They wouldn't understand. They'd say I was imagining things. But the thing is, I've seen the fear in his eyes too, if you could even call it fear. It wasn't human. It was something else. Something that waited. Something that lingers in the fog and the silence between the trees. And now, weeks later, even in my apartment, when I lie awake at night, I swear I can hear him walking outside my window, waiting. I can't sleep. I can't escape. And the truth is, I don't think he wants me to. Not really. Sometimes late at night, I think I hear the forest calling me, whispering my name through the trees. And I can't tell if it's the wind or if it's him, but I know one thing for certain, Jason is still out there. And he's not the friend I lost. Whatever I saw in those woods, whatever took him, it changed him. And I'm terrified that one day soon, I'll be walking down a quiet road or a lonely trail, and I'll turn my head, and he'll be there, waiting for me to follow him into the fog, because he's not just missing anymore. He's something else now. Something that moves between the trees and the shadows. And I can feel it, always. In the edge of my vision, in the rustle of the leaves, in the silence that's just a little too loud. And I don't know if I'll ever see him again as Jason, or if I'll see him at all before it's too late. The last time I saw him, he was smiling. Not the friendly, teasing smile I knew. It was a cold, slow, knowing smile, the kind that makes your stomach turn and your blood run icy. And I think he's waiting for me, and I don't know if I want to find out why. I woke up to the smell of damp earth and rotting leaves before I even opened my eyes. The fog had rolled in heavy last night, thicker than I'd ever seen in these parts, and it was still clinging to the mountains like a living thing. I knew something was off the moment I stepped out of my tent. The air was too still, too quiet. No birds, no wind, just this oppressive silence that made the hair on my neck stand up. My friends were still asleep, sprawled across the campsite, oblivious to the creeping unease pressing down on me. I felt a pull, like the woods themselves were watching, waiting for me to notice. I don't know why, but I went for a walk down the trail alone. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something darker I didn't understand yet. The trees pressed in on both sides, their twisted roots and jagged rocks turning the narrow path into a jagged staircase of mud and stone. Every step I took seemed louder than it should be, echoing unnaturally. The fog clung to my legs, dampening the sound of my boots but amplifying the crunch of dead leaves underfoot. That's when I saw it, a backpack sitting on the edge of the trail like it had been planted there. At first I thought it was one of my friends being careless. Then I noticed it wasn't like any backpack I'd ever seen. It was old canvas, frayed at the corners, but clean in a way that made it look almost staged, like someone had set it out for me to find. I called out, half laughing, half nervous, expecting one of them to answer. Silence. The fog shifted, and for a second I swore I saw movement, just a shadow behind the nearest oak. My heart started thumping. I wanted to turn around, to run back to the campsite, but I couldn't. Some part of me needed to see what was inside. The zipper was stiff, metal cold under my fingers. Inside I found the usual hiking stuff, a water bottle, a trail map, and a notebook. The notebook was filled with handwriting, small and neat, page after page of observations about the woods. Birds, trees, weather patterns, the sort of notes someone would take if they were watching me. I jerked back, the notebook falling from my hands. A gust of wind flipped the pages, and I swear I could see my own campsite sketched in the corner of one page. I stumbled backward, tripping over roots, my breath coming in sharp bursts. I ran. I ran until the trail opened into a clearing and I could see the campsite, tense, dull gray shapes in the fog. But when I got there, nothing was right. My friends were gone. Their backpacks, their shoes, even the firewood we had stacked neatly for breakfast, all gone. The tent sagged as if they had been folded down hastily. Panic slammed into me. I yelled their names, my voice bouncing off the mountains, but no reply came. The fog thickened, swallowing the trail behind me, and I felt that same sense of being watched tighten around me. I wanted to leave, to call for help, but my phone had no signal. Nothing but this oppressive silence. I circled the clearing, eyes darting to every shadow. Then I saw it again, the backpack. Same canvas, same frayed corners, sitting a few feet from the edge of the woods. How had it moved? I hadn't gone anywhere near that spot before. My stomach twisted. I picked it up, flipping through the notebook again. This time, there were new entries written in a hurried scrawl that I didn't recognize. One line made my blood run cold. "He's noticing me. Don't let him leave." The handwriting shifted mid-sentence, messy, almost frantic. I dropped it and stepped back, only to hear a rustle from the tree line. Something or someone was there. I can't explain what I felt next. Some part of me froze, rooted to the spot, while another part screamed at me to run. I took a step back, then another, tripping over the uneven ground, and that's when I saw them. Or rather saw it. A figure, hunched and dark, slipping between the trees, silent but moving with unnatural speed. I didn't see a face, just the sense of presence, something human, but not. My heart hammered so loudly I thought it would burst. I stumbled backward into the fog, trying to put distance between myself and whatever was out there. Hours must have passed. I don't know. Time had no meaning. I wandered blindly, the forest a maze of shadows and dripping leaves. Every turn brought me back to that backpack sitting on the trail like a sentinel. Every time I approached it, the notebook inside had new entries. Lines about my clothing, my movements, even my breathing. The words seemed impossibly recent, as if someone, or something, was writing them in real time. I screamed, threw the notebook into the mud, but the entries kept appearing, mocking me. I finally found the trail again, the main one that should have led back to the road. Relief surged, but it was short-lived. I could hear whispers, soft and almost human, floating through the trees. They didn't speak words I recognized, just a chorus of hissing murmurs that made my skin crawl. The closer I got to the edge of the forest, the more the whispers grew, layered on top of one another. I kept seeing movement just beyond the fog, shadows that didn't align with trees, shapes that paused when I stopped, then resumed when I moved. Eventually, I made it to the road. Or at least I thought I had. The fog lifted just enough for me to see headlights approaching. I waved, screaming, hoping for rescue, but the car slowed, then stopped short of me. In the dim light, I saw the driver, and I can't explain it, but the face wasn't human. Eyes too dark, skin grayish and stretched tight. I turned and ran back into the woods, heart pounding, boots slipping in the mud, desperate to escape. I don't know how long I ran. Maybe hours, maybe minutes. Every time I tripped, every time I stumbled, I expected to see that figure behind me, but it never appeared. Eventually, I collapsed near a stream, soaked, shivering, and when I looked up, I saw it again. The backpack, sitting on the opposite bank, as though waiting for me. I crawled forward, dragging myself through the mud, and for a moment I thought if I touched it, it would stop. But when I reached it, the notebook was gone. Only the backpack remained, empty and inert. I dragged it back to the clearing where I thought my campsite had been. Nothing. Just the fog and the bones of the forest. I screamed until my voice broke, until my lungs burned. I slept there, or maybe passed out, exhausted and soaked and terrified. When I woke, the fog was gone. The sun was high, shining through the treetops, mocking me with warmth. I ran the rest of the way to my car, parked miles away. But when I reached it, I found the backpack in the passenger seat. I swear I didn't put it there. I opened it one last time. The notebook was back. Page after page, every detail of my ordeal recorded. But one final line made my stomach turn. Tomorrow, he'll come back. I left the backpack on the side of the road, far from the forest, and drove away. I haven't gone back. I told the authorities about my friends, about the campsite, but there was no trace of them. No footprints, no abandoned tents, nothing. Just me and that endless stretch of Appalachian woods. At night, I can't sleep. I keep imagining the forest closing in, fog thickening, shadows moving just out of reach. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hear the crunch of leaves behind my window, the faint whisper of a zipper, and I know it's back. Sitting there, waiting, knowing that I will notice it again. That backpack. That cursed impossible backpack. I don't know what it wants. I don't know if my friends are still in there, if they ever existed at all. All I know is that every time I close my eyes, I can feel it watching. And the notebook keeps writing, even when I'm not there. I don't go into the woods anymore. I don't camp, I don't hike. But deep down, I know it's only a matter of time before I do, because the forest remembers. It remembers me, and that backpack is patient. I remember the moment it first felt wrong. We had been hiking all day through the thick Appalachian woods, my girlfriend, Claire, and I, aiming for a small clearing by a creek that some old trail guide promised would be perfect for camping. By the time we got there, the sun was halfway behind the ridge, and the forest had already started to cool in that way only these mountains do. The shadows stretched long, and the air smelled damp and earthy, like wet pine needles and moss. Claire went off to collect firewood while I set up our small tent. That's when I first noticed it, the feeling that we weren't alone. I thought it was just the woods playing tricks on me. You know how the trees sway and the shadows twist. It's easy for your mind to overreact, but then I saw movement, something at the edge of the clearing. A flicker, like someone stepping between the trunks, careful not to make noise. I called Claire over, thinking she'd find it funny too, but she laughed and said it was probably just a deer. That should have been the first warning. By nightfall, we had our fire going, the kind that throws more shadows than it sheds light. We sat close, roasting the few marshmallows we brought, the sound of the creek running nearby soothing in a way only a mountain stream can. That's when she started acting off. I thought I was imagining it at first. Her voice sounded the same, her laugh sounded right, but there was something in her eyes, or maybe in her expression, that didn't match. She kept glancing behind me at the woods, and every time I turned to see what she was looking at, there was nothing. "Are you okay?" I asked, but she smiled and nodded. Too wide, too quick. That's when I noticed the smell. It was faint but unmistakable. A metallic tang like blood mixed with wet dirt. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe she had stepped in a patch of rusted metal on the trail. But the smell clung to her, and it wasn't fading. We went to bed in the tent, the night pressing in. The sounds of the woods at night are comforting and terrifying all at once. The rustle of leaves, the distant cry of an owl, the snapping of branches under invisible feet. Claire fell asleep fast, but I couldn't. I kept hearing it, a soft footstep circling the tent. I assumed it was an animal, until I felt the weight on the sleeping bag next to mine shift slightly, like someone was leaning against it. I didn't move. My heart was hammering, but I couldn't tell if it was fear or disbelief. Then she spoke. Her voice soft, almost a whisper. "You awake?" It sounded like Claire, my Claire, but something in the tone froze me. It wasn't her warmth, it wasn't her casual teasing. It was hollow, precise, like a shadow speaking. I didn't answer. I waited. The weight moved closer. I told myself it was still her, half-sleep wandering into my space, but I couldn't shake the smell, metallic, sour. The kind that sticks in your nose. Morning didn't bring relief. I woke first, tent unzipped, and she wasn't there. That's weird, she always wakes up with me. I heard the creak first, then something else, shuffling, careful but deliberate, around our campsite. And then I saw her, or the thing pretending to be her, standing there. by the fire, crouched like she was inspecting the embers. I froze. It turned to me. My stomach dropped. Every detail was wrong. Her hair was slightly off in color, the shade darker. Her eyes closer together than they should be. She smiled, and it wasn't a smile I knew. The teeth were the same, but the shape was slightly sharper. She, or it, tilted its head like a curious dog, studying me. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. "Morning," it said, perfectly imitating her voice. I stammered, trying to speak, but nothing came out. My mind raced. There was no way this could be real. I thought maybe she'd fallen, hit her head, wandered off, and someone found her. But it couldn't move like her, couldn't hold itself in the same way. I noticed the hands first, too long, thin, pale, knuckled in a way Claire's never were. It stepped closer. "Where's Claire?" I finally croaked. It smiled again. "I'm right here," and it did something that made me lose every sense of rational thought. It reached forward and touched my arm, softly, like she always did. The touch should have reassured me, but it burned. The skin was ice cold, and underneath that icy feel, something else. Wrong, pulsing, something alive but not human. I bolted from the tent, adrenaline giving me the strength to sprint through the clearing. My brain screamed at me to find Claire, to check the fire, the backpack, anywhere. But the forest was thick, the trees closing in. Behind me I heard it move. Quick, silent but deliberate. Following. I tripped over roots, got up, ran harder. I could hear it mimicking noises now, almost like Claire's laughter echoing from the shadows. Every time I thought I lost it, the sound came closer, cutting through the morning mist. My lungs burned. My mind screamed for logic, but there was none. I rounded a bend and nearly ran straight into my girlfriend. She was there, real Claire, eyes wide, face pale. What are you doing?" "Stay back." "Don't move!" I shouted, but I didn't know who I was talking to. They both looked the same in the dim light, except the one following me was still there, just out of reach, a shadow in her form. Real Claire ran to me, grabbing my hand. Relief slammed into me, but it was short-lived. The other one mimicked her movements, stopped the same distance behind, every gesture mirrored. It smiled again. Teeth sharp, eyes too dark. We ran together, down the trail, branches whipping against our arms, the smell of that metallic presence thick in the air. Every so often the thing would pause, just like Claire would, just like we did, and when we looked back it would do the same. Always mimicking, always patient, never wrong. We found a small ranger station eventually. The radio inside crackled to life, a voice calm and neutral. "Are you okay?" Claire clung to me. We think someone was following us," I said, my voice shaking. The ranger frowned. "Alone?" I hesitated. "How do you explain someone who looks exactly like your girlfriend, moves exactly like her, smells like death?" We stayed there the night. Couldn't sleep. Every creak in the cabin had me frozen, listening for the soft mimicry, the echo of her voice that wasn't her voice. At dawn, we went back to the campsite. Nothing. No footprints except ours. No sign of the thing. I've read about doppelgangers, mimicry, and folklore, but nothing explains the smell, the cold touch, the way it could be Claire and not be Claire. We tried to tell people, the rangers shrugged it off. No missing persons reported. Just 2 hikers who looked a little shaken. Weeks later, I still smell it sometimes. Metallic, damp. I wake up hearing the sound of footsteps circling my apartment at night. Sometimes I hear a soft laugh, and it's her voice. It's never real Claire. I know that now. I can't go back to those woods. I can't sleep in the dark. And every time I look at her, I wonder if she's real, or if that thing learned too well. It never attacked. It never tried to kill. It just wanted to be accepted, imitated, blended in. But the eyes tell you everything. Something walked into our campsite pretending to be my girlfriend, and I don't know if it ever left. Sometimes I think it's still out there, learning, waiting for someone else to make a mistake. The thought keeps me awake, keeps me paranoid. But the worst part? Deep down, I can't stop looking for the smile, the familiar warmth in the shadows, hoping it's her. And every time I see it, just for a split second, smiling back. Not Claire, not her. Something else. It's been months. I've tried to tell myself it was stress or sleep deprivation. But every time I close my eyes, I remember that touch, that smell, and the way it moved like her. Perfect. Too perfect. And I know if I ever go back into the woods, I'll see it again, pretending, waiting, watching, smiling. I don't think there's ever going to be a safe place for me again. I remember it starting as soon as I parked at the trailhead. The air was heavy with damp pine and the faint tang of something metallic that I couldn't place. The way you notice a smell and immediately question your own senses. I'd gone to the Appalachians looking for solitude, wanting to shake off the constant noise of city life and social media, and I thought a solo hike would be perfect. But from the moment I stepped onto the trail, I knew something was off. The usual chatter of birds was muted, almost as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The sun was low, spilling orange streaks through the trees, and the shadows were already stretching long across the ground, twisting over roots and rocks in unnatural shapes. About an hour in, I heard it. The whistle. A clear, high-pitched note that cut through the forest like a blade. It wasn't the typical bird call or the wind whistling through the pines. It had a deliberate, almost human rhythm. I froze and listened. Then it came again, a little closer this time. My first instinct was to convince myself it was another hiker, maybe someone trying to signal. I called out, but my voice sounded hollow and small, swallowed immediately by the dense trees. No answer, just the whistle again, now closer and slower, like it was teasing me. I should have turned back then, should have hiked straight out of there. But curiosity, stupid curiosity, made me follow it. Each step I took made the forest feel tighter, the trees leaning in, shadows pooling at the edges of my vision. My boots crunched on dead leaves, and every time I thought I glimpsed movement from the corner of my eye, it vanished before I could process it. The whistle kept coming, soft and insistent, like someone coaxing me deeper. After what felt like an hour, I stumbled into a small clearing. The smell hit me first, sharp, iron-like, and wet like old blood. The whistle had stopped. I stood there trying to hear over the pounding of my own heart. The light was dim, filtered through a thick canopy, but I could see a faint trail, narrow and overgrown, leading further into the trees. I knew logically I should turn back, but the whistle had planted this seed of irrational compulsion, this gnawing thought that I needed to see who or what was calling me. The deeper I went, the denser the forest became. Vines snagged my clothes, roots threatened to trip me with every step, and the light was fading faster than it should have. I started to notice strange things. Rocks stacked unnaturally, as if someone had been there recently. Twigs broken in patterns, not random but deliberate. And then, signs of life, or something pretending to be life. A flash of movement ahead, a shadow darting between trees. Every time I focused, it was gone. Around dusk, the whistle returned. This time it was closer than ever, like it was inside my head. My skin crawled, my stomach twisted, and my instincts screamed at me to run. But again, I couldn't stop. The sound was seductive in a way I can't describe, a lonely, aching thing that felt like it understood me. I remember thinking for a split second that maybe the person whistling knew something I didn't, something important, something I needed to see. I reached another clearing, and there it was, a tree, huge and gnarled, with bark blackened like it had been burned long ago. At its base, there were small piles of leaves and sticks arranged in circles, almost like tiny altars. And then I noticed them, footprints too small to be mine, leading around the tree and into the shadows beyond. I felt a shiver run down my spine, my chest tightening. My rational brain was screaming at me that I was being lured, that this was not a game. But the whistle sounded again, closer, almost mournful, and I stepped forward. The forest felt alive now, pressing against me from all sides. Every snap of a branch, every rustle in the leaves made me jump. I could swear I felt eyes on me, just at the edge of sight, watching, waiting. I tried to tell myself it was paranoia, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. There's a weight in the Appalachian woods at night, something older than people, something patient. It presses on your chest and whispers that you don't belong there. I stumbled into a narrow valley, and the whistle came from below. My boots slipped on loose soil, and my hands grabbed roots and rocks to stop my fall. The sound echoed in the hollow, stretching unnaturally long, bouncing off the rocks. I realized with a sinking heart that I had no idea where I was or how far I'd come from the main trail. My sense of direction had melted away. Panic started to set in, but the whistle, it kept me moving, pulling me like a tether I couldn't break. I saw a cabin then, or what looked like a cabin. It was old, more like a shack, leaning at an impossible angle. The wood was gray and cracked, the roof sagging, and a faint light flickered from inside. I should have turned around. I should have run. But I approached anyway. The whistle stopped as soon as I reached the door. Silence stretched for what felt like minutes, and then a slow, deliberate creak, like someone pressing on the door from the inside. I froze. The door opened, but no one was there. Only a faint smell of damp earth and something coppery. I stepped inside cautiously. The floor was littered with more of those little altars, each with feathers, bones, and sticks. Symbols scratched into the wood walls. And then I saw it, a notebook lying open on a table. I approached, drawn to it. The pages were filled with names, dates, and notes. And in the corner of the last page, scrawled in uneven letters, was my name. I froze, the air heavy and choking. That whistle, the one that had been leading me here, it wasn't coming from outside. It was in my head, deep and insistent. I wanted to scream, but my throat closed up. Every instinct I had told me to run, yet my legs refused to move. Shadows moved along the walls, shifting shapes that shouldn't be able to shift. And then I realized something worse than fear. I wasn't alone. A figure emerged from the shadows, humanoid but wrong. Too thin, limbs too long, face blurred like it was never meant to be seen. It didn't speak, didn't make a sound, just stared with hollow darkness where eyes should be. The whistle in my head rose in pitch, unbearable now, like it was burrowing into my skull. I stumbled backward, knocking the notebook to the floor. The figure mirrored me, gliding closer with that impossible, silent grace. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed by the creature and the sound. I thought I would die of terror, that the forest itself was swallowing me. Then in a moment of pure instinct I ran. Out the door, into the trees, branches tearing at my skin, roots tripping me, mud sucking at my boots. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. The whistle faded slightly but never fully left me. Even as I stumbled back onto the main trail hours later, exhausted and bleeding, it lingered at the edges of my hearing. I made it to my car just as the first light of dawn broke through the trees. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely start the engine. I drove without looking back through winding mountain roads, my heart hammering like it would break my chest. When I finally reached a gas station in a small town, I sat in the car trying to convince myself it had been a hallucination, a nightmare. But when I checked my bag, the notebook was there, the same one from the cabin, and on the first page was a new entry in that same uneven scrawl, today's date. And beneath it a single word, still following. I left the notebook on the seat, drove away, but the whistle, it hasn't stopped. Some nights when the wind blows just right and the trees outside my window sway, I hear it. I hear that same teasing, deliberate note calling me back to the forest. And I know deep down I'll never truly escape. I should have ignored it. I should have stayed on the trail. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and in the Appalachians, some curiosities follow you home. I still hear it now. It's faint, almost comforting in a way, like it's telling me I'm not alone. But I know better. It's waiting, patient, reminding me that some trails, once taken, never end. And sometimes, if you listen too closely, they find you long after the sun has set. It was around dusk when I noticed the journal sitting on my porch. I live alone up in the Appalachians, a small cabin my grandparents left me, and I hadn't seen another soul for almost a week. At first I thought it was some lost hiker leaving their notes behind. That area is notorious for people vanishing or getting lost, so I didn't think much of it. The journal was old-looking, leather-bound, but not in a clean, cared-for way. More like it had been dragged through mud and underbrush. When I picked it up, the smell hit me first. Damp earth, sweat, and something metallic, like old blood. My stomach turned. I wanted to set it down and forget about it, but something made me flip it open. The handwriting was jagged, messy, like whoever wrote it had been constantly moving, panicked. The first entry was dated about 3 weeks ago, and it read like a normal hiking log at first. Trails taken, streams crossed, nights camped alone. But then the entries became more frantic. The hiker started talking about hearing whispers from the trees and feeling like someone, or something, was following me. I laughed nervously to myself, trying to rationalize it. I've lived in these woods all my life. The wind makes strange noises, and animals sometimes sound almost human in the night. Still, the more I read, the colder I felt, like the temperature around me had dropped a few degrees. By the 4th page, the journal described how the hiker had seen a cabin from afar, small and weather-beaten. They had circled it for hours, too scared to approach, But the feeling in the air was heavy and the shadows moved wrong. I stopped reading for a second and looked at my own cabin. The sun had dipped below the ridge and my porch was draped in shadows. My skin prickled. I told myself it was nothing, a coincidence, but the hairs on my arms refused to lie down. The next few entries were worse. The hiker wrote about someone or something coming out of the forest at night. They didn't see it clearly, just a figure, tall, hunched, watching from the tree line. The handwriting became larger, more erratic. "I can hear its breathing," one line said. "It follows me every step, but disappears when I turn." The last entry was just one sentence, scrawled over the rest of the page. "It's waiting for me where I rest tonight." I set the journal down, hands shaking. My cabin felt suffocating, like the walls were pressing in. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was some urban legend playing on my mind, the same stories everyone in these parts whispers about hikers going missing in the hills. I went to make a cup of coffee to calm down, but the noise outside made me freeze. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, not like deer or raccoon tracks. I held my breath, staring out the window, seeing nothing but the fog rolling in from the valley. Then I heard it again, closer this time. Something circling my cabin. I didn't move, my heart hammering. I grabbed the journal again, thinking if I just read the next pages I might understand. Maybe it would explain what was happening. The entries continued, but the handwriting became almost illegible. The hiker described losing time, waking up in spots they didn't remember walking to, their packs scattered across unfamiliar trails. One page had a sketch of the figure in the woods, tall, featureless, but with limbs that looked wrong, like they bent the wrong way. I tried to laugh at it, how ridiculous, but my laugh got caught in my throat. That sketch was unnervingly like the shadows I'd glimpsed outside. Then I heard something knock at the door. Not a tap, a knock, deliberate, heavy. My gut dropped. I checked the windows, nothing. I thought about leaving, running down the hill to the main road, but the entries kept me rooted. The hiker had done that once, left the trail in a panic and vanished for days. I didn't want to disappear. I opened the door slowly, the journal clutched in my hands. No one was there. Just leaves scattered across the porch, rolling gently in the wind. I laughed nervously, telling myself I was imagining it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The journal sat on the floor next to my bed. Every creak of the cabin sounded like footsteps. Around 2 a.m., I heard whispering, low, almost inaudible at first, coming from the woods. My blood ran cold. I leaned over the window, trying to see anything, but it was just black and fog. The whispers grew louder, clearer. They sounded like words, urgent and broken, but I couldn't make sense of them. My mind raced, thinking maybe it was the hiker somehow, still wandering. Maybe they were calling for help. But the journal's final words echoed in my head. "It's waiting for me where I rest tonight." I tried to ignore it, pulled the blanket over my head, but the whispers became footsteps inside the cabin. Not light steps, heavy, dragging steps like something large moving slowly. I didn't dare move. My entire body shook and my stomach twisted into knots. The journal flipped open by itself, landing face up on the floor. I could see the last page, smeared with what looked like dirt and blood. There was a note written in someone else's handwriting, jagged and rushed. "Do not sleep. Do not leave. It's close." I spent the night sitting upright, clutching an old hunting knife from the wall. I didn't hear the footsteps anymore, but every time I closed my eyes, I felt it behind me, breathing, waiting. I didn't sleep. I didn't dare. Morning came slowly. The fog was thick, and the woods looked hostile, oppressive. I didn't go outside, but I heard the whispering again, faint now, fading into the wind. I wanted to burn the journal, throw it in the fire, but I was too afraid to touch it again. Part of me didn't want to destroy it, like if I did, it would follow me anyway. My cabin felt smaller somehow, suffocating, like the trees themselves had leaned in. That day, I tried to leave. I needed to get help, someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. I grabbed my keys and ran down the path, but when I reached the bottom of the hill, my truck was gone. Not stolen. The tire tracks were there, but the truck had vanished. Panic hit me hard, my legs shaking. I ran back to the cabin, thinking maybe I'd gone mad, imagining everything. The porch was empty again, but the journal had moved. It was sitting neatly in the center, like someone had placed it there. I didn't sleep that night either. The whispering returned, more insistent, almost angry now. I started hearing it during the day too, soft under the wind, in the rustle of leaves. I swear I could feel eyes on me constantly. Every time I glanced into the woods, I saw movement at the edge of my vision. Tall, hunched shapes slipping between trees. My food supply started disappearing. I would leave cans of beans or bottles of water out for a few hours, and they would vanish. Like someone or something was eating out of my fridge while I wasn't looking. I tried leaving again a week later. I thought if I just hiked the trails to the nearest town, I could finally get out. I packed what I could carry, including the journal, thinking maybe I would leave it behind. But when I reached the trailhead, the path had changed. I swear to God, it wasn't the same trail I had taken 100 times. The trees seemed closer together, darker, as if the forest itself had grown while I wasn't looking. I panicked, tried to retrace my steps, but everything twisted into unfamiliar shapes. I ran blindly, slipping in mud, cutting my hands on branches until I collapsed near a small creek. My chest burned, my legs gave out, and I felt something brush past me in the water. That's when I realized the journal was gone. It had slipped from my backpack while I ran, but I could hear it, faintly whispering my name. I scrambled back, looking around, but it was gone, like it had sunk into the creek. My voice caught in my throat when I heard a reply, not human but unmistakable, a whisper coming from the woods back up the hill. "Do not sleep. Do not leave." I crawled back to my cabin, exhausted, covered in mud, bleeding, but I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder. Every tree seemed to lean toward me. Every shadow seemed alive. I barricaded myself inside, tying doors and windows with whatever I could find. I lit a fire, hoping the light would keep whatever was out there at bay. The whispering never stopped. It started scratching at the walls, at the floor. I could hear it in the vents, in the ceiling, everywhere. I can't leave. I can't sleep. I've tried everything, running, climbing, hiding, but it's always there, watching, following. The journal's pages haunt me in my mind now, repeating the hiker's last words, their panic and terror mirrored in my own. I've started writing again, trying to remember what happened in case someone finds this later. Maybe someone will. Maybe it will be on someone else's porch. I see shapes in the forest at night, tall and hunched, and I know I'll never be able to convince anyone of what I've seen. The whispers don't stop. I hear them even when the wind is still. I've tried screaming, but my voice is swallowed by the trees. I don't know how long I can last like this. If you find a journal on a cabin porch in the Appalachians, don't pick it up. Don't read it. Whatever follows, the hiker follows you too. And if you think you're safe inside, think again. They wait, they watch. And when you fall asleep, they don't let you wake up. I should have turned back the moment my GPS started acting weird, but stubbornness, I guess call it curiosity, kept me pressing forward. I'd been hiking the Appalachian Trail for 3 days alone, aiming for a small, remote stretch a friend had mentioned. The maps all made it look straightforward, but my GPS had other ideas. The sun was just slipping behind the ridges when I realized I'd passed the same crumbling campsite for the 3rd time. There was a fire pit with blackened stones, a bent metal picnic table, and the remnants of a rusted cooler half buried in the dirt. Nothing about it was welcoming, but something about seeing it over and over made my stomach knot. At first, I laughed it off. Maybe I'd taken a wrong turn or my GPS was glitching. I pulled my phone out and recalibrated, walking the path again, thinking I'd just missed a trail marker. But within 20 minutes, there it was. Same site. Same scorched stones, same broken picnic table, same smell of damp ash and rot. I swear the smell hit me before I even saw it the 4th time, like someone had burned something wet, then left it to fester. My heart started hammering, but I told myself I was just tired. That's all. Tired and jumpy. I tried walking a bit farther, forcing myself down a narrow side path that forked off the main trail. Leaves crunched underfoot, and the evening air was sticky with humidity, but the forest felt wrong. Quiet in a way that wasn't natural. Birds weren't calling, bugs weren't buzzing. I passed an old oak with bark scraped away in vertical lines, deep, jagged scars, and for a second, I thought I saw movement behind it. I froze, squinting, my breath coming shallow. But there was nothing there. Just shadows stretching long and strange. By now the GPS was practically taunting me. Every few minutes it would flash, recalculating, and then its little blue dot would blink, inching me back to the same campsite. I don't know how it worked, but I felt trapped. I tried taking side trails, climbing small ridges, circling wide loops, but no matter what, I ended up back there. and with each return the fire pit seemed different. The ashes looked fresher, like something had been burned just moments ago, and I started noticing scraps of what looked like fabric or fur, charred black and unrecognizable. I gagged, thinking maybe an animal had been killed there. By the third loop, the sun had dipped below the horizon, and the forest darkened to an almost suffocating black. My flashlight cut through the trees, but it felt small and weak. Every shadow seemed to twitch just out of view, and I swear I kept hearing something move behind me, branches snapping, leaves rustling, like someone, or something, was following me. I tried calling out, even shouted my own name, but my voice felt small, swallowed by the woods. The only response was a distant, hollow echo that sounded like it was coming from everywhere at once. I tried rationalizing. Maybe another hiker had set up some kind of trap or prank. Maybe locals warned of this spot for a reason. My legs were trembling, but I had to keep moving. I spotted a faint trail leading uphill, away from the campsite, and started following it, heart thumping. Every step felt heavier, like the forest itself was resisting me. Then I noticed something crawling along the edge of my flashlight beam, footprints. Barefoot, deep in the soft dirt, like someone had been there very recently. And they were small, child-sized maybe, but I had the distinct impression that they were leading me back, directly toward the campsite again. I broke into a run, ignoring the branches that tore at my jacket and scratched my face. My GPS still blinked, recalculating, blue dot hopping, and then, there, the campsite again, as if the world had folded back onto itself. I skidded to a stop, gasping. My flashlight flickered, and I swear I saw a figure crouched near the fire pit, still, too still and wrong. Its head tilted at an impossible angle. I froze. The air smelled sharp and metallic, like blood, and a cold wind stirred the embers in the fire pit, even though the trees were still. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. Then I heard it. Laughter. Quiet at first, like it was carried on the wind, almost melodic, but edged with something brittle and broken. I spun my flashlight around, hard in my throat, but the beam caught nothing. Nothing alive, at least. Then I heard the laughter again, closer, right behind me. I whipped around. The campsite was empty, but now the fire pit glowed faintly, like something was smoldering under the ash. I saw a shadow flicker in the corner of my eye, low and fast like a person crawling. I ran. I don't know how far, branches whipping me in the face, tripping over roots, my lungs burning. I stopped only when I reached a creek I recognized from my trail map. For a moment, relief flooded me. I knew the path from here led to a ranger station a few miles down. I pulled out my phone, GPS recalculated, blue dot spinning, and then, with a sinking feeling, it started moving. Slowly, back toward the campsite. My stomach dropped. I was not walking toward it. I was nowhere near it. Yet the GPS insisted guiding me back. I slammed the phone shut. I couldn't follow it anymore. I didn't want to. I camped by the creek that night, too scared to sleep. The sounds of the forest seemed amplified in the dark. The snap of branches, the hiss of small animals, maybe larger ones. Every shadow looked like a person. Every rustle made my heart jump. I thought I saw that figure again, crouching near the far bank, head tilted, watching. But when I shined my flashlight, nothing, just mist rising off the creek. Morning brought little comfort. My phone had died overnight, so I couldn't check the GPS. I considered heading back to the main trail the old-fashioned way, using the map, compass, and landmarks. I packed quickly, glancing nervously over my shoulder, and then I saw them, footprints, leading from the campsite to my creekside clearing. And I was the only person in the area. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come. My stomach turned as the footprints stopped at the water's edge, no signs of where they went. I followed them cautiously. Nothing, just smooth dirt, stones, and a sense that I was being toyed with. By noon, I reached the trail again. I kept telling myself it was over, that I'd escaped. But the feeling didn't leave. Every time I stopped to rest, I felt eyes on me. Every time the wind shifted, I thought I heard that laugh, soft, brittle, echoing from nowhere. I tried to call the ranger station when I finally got a signal. The operator was polite, but there was static under her voice, like someone whispering behind her. When I asked about the campsite I kept passing, she hesitated and said, "You mean the one near Black Oak Ridge?" My blood ran cold. "Yes," I said. "Why?" She laughed, low and nervous, and then the line went dead. I made it to my car eventually, shaking, sweaty, and nauseous. I didn't sleep on the drive home. I kept thinking about the campsite, the footprints, the laugh. I keep seeing it in my mind. The tilted head, the embers glowing in that blackened pit, the forest bending me back to it. I've tried to go back with friends. I've tried to find the campsite again. Maps, GPS, trail markers. Nothing leads there anymore. It's like it never existed, except for the smell that sometimes drifts into my apartment. Faint, metallic, burning, and the memory of laughter carried on no wind that echoes when I close my eyes. I don't know if I'll ever go hiking alone again. I don't know if it was a person or something else. All I know is that when I think I've escaped, I can feel it watching, waiting. And sometimes late at night, my GPS flashes on my phone, just for a second, showing the blue dot moving, always back to the same campsite I can never find. I felt it before I even saw it. A heat in the back of my neck, a chill crawling down my spine even though the summer air was thick and heavy. I don't know why I agreed to this hiking trip with friends in the Appalachian backwoods, but by the time we got to the trailhead, my gut was already screaming that something wasn't right. The morning had been overcast, the kind of gray that doesn't promise rain but makes everything feel muted, like the world's lost its edges. I shrugged it off, pretending to be brave, but deep down I didn't want to be there. We'd parked by the old ranger station, which looked abandoned but for the rusty sign swinging in the wind. My friend, Mason, had insisted he'd read about this secret spot somewhere online, where the view at the top of the ridge was worth every mile of the trail. We set off, boots crunching over the dry leaves and cracked twigs, laughing at nothing much, trying to mask the way the forest seemed. Too quiet. No birds, no rustle of squirrels. Just our feet and the faint whistle of the wind in the high branches. The first 2 hours passed fine. We followed the narrow trail winding up the ridge, the air thinning as we climbed. Every so often, Mason would point out some tree formation or moss-covered rock, acting like a nature documentary host. I trailed behind, keeping my eyes on the ground, avoiding shadows that seemed darker than they should be, flickering as if alive. It was around midday when I noticed the smell. Smoke. Not the kind from a campfire, but acrid, almost metallic. I stopped sniffing the air. Mason and the others were a few yards ahead. "Do you guys smell that?" I called and they waved me on, laughing. But the smell didn't go away. It got stronger, layered with the scent of something else. Rotting wood, wet earth, and something else. Something faintly chemical, unnatural. We reached a clearing where the ridge leveled off, and that's when I saw it. A fire, deep in the woods, far enough off the trail that it shouldn't exist. No smoke rising straight into the sky, no wind stirring the flames. Just this glowing orange light flickering between the trees, like a candle burning inside a hollowed-out log. The others noticed it too, and we froze, unsure if we should investigate or turn back. Mason's curiosity won. He started off the trail toward it, calling over his shoulder for the rest of us to follow. Something about him was different. His usual carefree grin was replaced with this tense eagerness, like he could feel the fire pulling him in. I hesitated, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The flames were too small to be a real wildfire, but too consistent to be natural. They didn't dance like a normal fire, they just sat there burning, almost aware. We got closer, slipping through underbrush, when the first odd thing happened. A sound, a low, dragging noise, like metal scraping against stone. It stopped when we froze, then started again from somewhere deeper in the woods, circling around us. "Probably a fallen branch or a deer," Mason said, though even his voice trembled. I didn't believe him. My skin crawled as if invisible hands were tracing my spine. By the time we reached the clearing, the fire looked almost alive. It wasn't big, maybe 3 feet across, but it burned with an intensity that made no sense in a place this wet and shaded. The smell was overwhelming now, acrid and sharp, almost tasting in my mouth. And that's when I saw them, shadows, moving against the edges of the fire. They weren't human, at least not fully. Limbs too long, torsos twisted, crouched low, watching us. Every instinct in me screamed to run, but Mason was already stepping closer, holding out his hand as if to greet them. I grabbed his arm. "Mason, what the hell?" He shook me off. "It's fine. They're just watching. They want us to see." "Come on, don't be scared." I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The shadows began to shift, moving closer to the fire. bending in ways that defied physics. And then one of them stepped forward, and I realized it was wearing Mason's jacket. My stomach dropped. I glanced at him, but he wasn't wearing it anymore. Panic hit me full force. I grabbed my phone to call 911, only to find there was no signal. The woods here, deep in the Appalachians, weren't supposed to have cell service, but I didn't expect to feel so utterly trapped. Mason laughed nervously, saying it was probably a trick of the light. I didn't care about explanations. I just knew we needed to leave, but the trail back had vanished. I swear it had been right there when we came up. The underbrush was thick now, thorny branches snagging our clothes, and the shadows from the fire seemed to stretch across the forest like black water, moving to block every exit. Mason stopped laughing. His face was pale. Maybe we shouldn't go back, he said, voice small. Maybe we're supposed to... He didn't finish. Something rustled behind us. We turned, expecting a deer or some small animal. Instead, another shadow detached itself from the tree line, taller than any human, with glimmering eyes reflecting the firelight. It didn't move like a person. It didn't even move like an animal. It flowed. My mind couldn't process it, and I felt my knees weaken. I grabbed Mason, shouting, "We're leaving! Now!" We ran blindly, crashing through the forest, branches whipping against our faces. The fire stayed behind us, steady and burning, never diminishing, as if it were waiting for something. Every now and then, I glimpsed movement at the corner of my vision, more shadows, more figures emerging, watching. They never chased us, but the pressure, the awareness of being hunted, was suffocating. After what felt like hours, we stumbled onto a small dirt road I didn't recognize. The fire and the shadows were gone. The forest looked normal again, like nothing had ever been wrong. Mason and I collapsed on the roadside, panting, our clothes torn and faces scratched. I tried to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. I just kept shaking, listening for the sound of the fire or the shadows, but there was only silence. We made it back to the ranger station eventually, but it was empty. No cars, no hikers, no signs of anyone. I called the local authorities, and they told us there were no reports of missing people, no fires, nothing unusual. I tried to explain what we saw, what we ran from, but the words sounded insane even to me. They suggested it might have been heat exhaustion, hallucinations, anything to make sense of it. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the fire, small and burning, and the twisted shadows lurking just at the edge of the light. I dreamt of Mason's jacket lying on the forest floor, moving on its own. I dreamt of voices, whispers in a language I couldn't understand, calling from the woods. Mason hasn't spoken much since that day. He won't go back near the forest, and when I ask about the fire, he just shakes his head, as if saying some things are better left unspoken. But I know what we saw. I know it was real, even if no one else does. A week later, I went back near the trailhead. I just wanted to see, just a glimpse, to prove to myself it wasn't all in my head. But when I reached the spot where the fire should have been visible from the ridge, there was nothing. Just trees, quiet and ordinary, as if the burning, the shadows, the terror never existed. I still dream about it every single night. The fire that shouldn't be, burning deep in the woods where no one should be. The shadows that watch and wait. And sometimes when I'm walking alone, I swear I can smell the smoke again, faint and metallic, curling through the air, reminding me that whatever is out there is still waiting. I don't know why it chose us, or if it even cared that we survived. I just know one thing, those woods aren't empty. They never were. And if you ever hear about a fire burning deep in the Appalachians where no one should be, don't go looking. Because whatever's burning, it sees you too. Even now, I can still see it, glowing faintly behind my closed eyelids. A fire that shouldn't exist, in a forest that's bigger than it looks, watching, patient, eternal. I shouldn't have gone back into the woods, but I can't stop replaying it in my head, and maybe writing it down will make it real, or at least make someone believe me. We'd been hiking in the Appalachians for years, my friends and I, nothing fancy, just weekend trips to get away from the noise of our lives. My friend Luke was always the one daring everyone to push further, go higher, camp in the rougher spots. That Saturday, he had that look in his eyes, the one I'd learned to read over the years, like he wanted to disappear into the hills just to prove he could. I should have said no. I didn't. We'd started early, the air heavy with the smell of damp pine needles and wet earth from a morning rain that had passed hours before. Birds were quiet, too quiet, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Luke was already 200 feet ahead, grinning at me over his shoulder, waving me to keep up. I tried, I really did, but my boots kept catching on roots, mud sticking to the soles like the forest was pulling me back. And then I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible crunching behind me. I froze. "Luke?" I called. Nothing, just the wind whispering through the pines. We reached the ridge by noon. From up there, the valley below looked like a green sea, thick mist curling around the trees. Luke went on, scrambling down a narrow trail I didn't want to follow. I stayed back, watching him disappear among the shadows. I swear I should have left it there. But then he yelled, a short, sharp shout that sounded like panic. I froze again. Something in his tone made my stomach knot. It wasn't a joke, it wasn't playful. He sounded terrified. I dropped my pack, scrambled down after him. The trail was treacherous, jagged rocks and slick mud underfoot. I slipped once and caught myself just in time. And then I heard it screaming. Luke screaming, but it wasn't from any direction I could tell. It was as if the sound was coming from inside the forest itself, bouncing off invisible walls, echoing between trees. My heart slammed in my chest. I called his name, my voice breaking. No response. Just the scream again. Closer this time. I spun in circles trying to locate him. My flashlight from my pack barely cut through the late afternoon gloom. Shadows were thick, twisting shapes where the trees met the ground. I found his jacket draped over a bush. It looked like he had ripped it off in a hurry. The zipper was half open, mud smeared along the fabric. I started shouting again, panic rising like bile in my throat. And then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, behind me. I whipped around, but no one was there. Only the trees swaying gently, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. By the time we made it back to where we'd parked the car, the sun was dipping below the peaks. I called the local rangers, told them Luke was missing. They were polite but professional, nodding, writing things down. A search party was assembled. 30 people, trained hikers and rangers, flashlights, radios, the whole setup. I rode with them to the start of the trail, trying to keep my voice calm, trying not to cry. The first day of searching was grim but routine. We followed the trail, checked the ridge lines, hollows, creeks. Nothing. Just the same quiet forest like it hadn't swallowed my friend at all. By the second day, the screaming had started again. It wasn't loud, just a distant, tortured sound, almost pleading. The others didn't hear it, or if they did, they didn't say anything. I thought I was losing my mind. The forest has a way of doing that. Shapes in the shadows, sounds bouncing off rocks, your imagination filling the gaps. By the third day, the search party started thinning. People were called back, their shifts over, families waiting. The rangers said the likelihood of survival was extremely low, that Luke had probably gotten lost, injured, fallen. They told me to go home, for my own safety. I couldn't. I stayed at the edge of the woods, listening. And then I heard him. It was past midnight, the sky black, only a faint mist curling along the ground. I was crouched near the creek, trying to stay quiet. The scream came again, unmistakable this time. Luke. It was him, calling my name, screaming like something was tearing him apart. I didn't think, I ran. My feet tore through the mud, branches slapping my face, my breath coming in gasps that felt like fire in my lungs. But every time I thought I was getting closer, the sound shifted, moving farther away. I was being toyed with. I followed the sound until I reached a small clearing. The moon was hidden behind clouds, but I could see enough. The ground was churned, mud smeared like someone had dragged themselves across it. And then I saw it. Symbols, carved into the bark of trees. Deep, jagged scratches forming shapes I didn't recognize. They smelled of iron like blood. I gagged. The scream stopped. Silence. The kind of silence that presses down on your chest and won't let go. I ran blindly until I reached an old ranger cabin someone had pointed out as a landmark. It was locked, abandoned. I banged on the door, screaming, hoping anyone would hear. Nothing. The wind picked up, carrying whispers. Not words exactly, but voices, snippets, laughter, crying. I curled against the door, shivering, and that's when I saw him. Luke, standing at the edge of the clearing, just beyond the tree line. Completely still. I froze, not sure if relief or terror should come first. He didn't move, didn't blink. Just watched. I called his name. Nothing. And then I noticed it. His eyes. Not the Luke I knew. Empty, dark, like the forest had hollowed him out from the inside. I took a step forward and he tilted his head, a slow, deliberate motion. A whisper reached me on the wind, not his voice, something else. "Leave." I stumbled back, heart hammering. That's when I realized the screaming had started again, but not from him. From inside the woods all around me. Hundreds of voices, twisted, inhuman, crying and calling, echoing off unseen rocks and hollows. I ran without looking back. I didn't stop until the first light of dawn spilled across the ridge, until I saw the edge of the road where the rangers had told me to stay. The search party officially called off the search 2 days later. "We've done everything we can," they said, pats on the back, claps on the shoulder. "He's gone." They left. Everyone left, only me. I stayed, refusing to leave because I know what I heard. And sometimes, late at night, I still hear it. Screaming. My friend. Not far, not lost, just trapped. Something in the woods took him. Something that doesn't follow normal rules. Something that hides in shadows and moves like the mist. I can't explain why I stayed. Maybe guilt. Maybe I'm hoping I'll hear his voice and run to him, and maybe he's still alive, maybe not. Sometimes I wake up and think I hear him in the wind outside my cabin. Sometimes I drive by the forest and feel eyes on me, though I know that's probably paranoia. But it's not paranoia, not entirely. I hear him, or I hear something wearing him, calling me, begging me. And the thing that terrifies me the most is that the screaming doesn't get closer. It never does. It just stays out there waiting. And I know it will never end. I keep telling myself not to go back. But every time the wind shifts, every time the branches scratch against my window, I feel it. The pull of that clearing, the carved trees, the smell of iron in the mud. I feel it calling me. And I know deep down if I ever go back, I'll find him, or what's left of him, and maybe it will let me leave. Maybe it won't. The last time I tried to sleep after hearing the scream, I dreamt of Luke. He was smiling, standing in the mist, just out of reach. But when I reached for him, the ground opened beneath me. Shadows rolled over everything, and I woke up gasping, mud on my hands like I'd been dragged. I swear I didn't touch the floor. The search party stopped looking for my friend months ago. But I hear him, every night, screaming, waiting, and I know one day I'll answer.